Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joe Menza here, and we're outside again just to enjoy the outdoors, not necessarily plein air, but it's a lot better than being in the house. Now that we have the nice weather, it's about 80 degrees out. I thought maybe we'd cool things down a little bit with some cool mountains. I put my usual 3 layers of water on the paper, and now I'm taking some yellow ochre and just creating some shading, some staining for our background. Adding a little alizarin crimson hue using the Cotman colors. I'm using 140-pound Fabriano studio paper. Comes in a pad block. You can get it in a pad of 50 is your best value. I usually ordered off of like Amazon or somewhere. And I'm making a little bit of a purpley color up using the alizarin and the ultramarine blue, little Payne's gray, and just a tiny bit of white gouache. We're always trying to create atmosphere, and we're trying to create areas of light. So that's what we're doing here. We're just sort of doing our little paddling motion here of creating some interesting clouds, having some light coming through, a little bit of that alizarin coming through, a little bit of that yellow ochre. And as we get a little bit of that on there, then we take and change it up a little bit, add a little more alizarin, and we're just intensifying certain areas just to create a dramatic sky and some atmosphere. And you could do this in whatever shape, form you want. And as I always say, you have, 3 minutes to do this before it starts to dry. I'm going to start putting in some mountain shapes here. Just using some little triangular patterns. Same sky colors, haven't washed the brush yet. Taking a little bit of a wet brush and taking out a little bit of the color there. Just getting a little too solid. You can go in, you can do that. You can take a clean edge of the brush, you can take a tissue. And I'm just giving this a little bit of a spray here, so I like to see things run a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to put some darker mountains over the top of those and let the other ones sort of recede to the back. And again, this is alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and some Payne's gray. So now you can see we're almost getting a three-dimensional effect here. Going to take my plastic card and we're going to just start shaping some ridges to these mountains, where there'd be some snow or ice or whatever. You want that to be dark and wet, that paint, when you start scraping. I've had people ask me, I've tried doing it. Paint has to be dark and it has to be on pretty heavy to really have a convincing scrape with the card. And then I come back with the darker color and just kind of blend in a little bit more shadow colors. And if you do too much, you can always come back again and scrape just a little bit more. And it's the mountains are the same color as the sky. It's just the amount of blue and Payne's gray have been increased. So it's in the same family of colors. Now I'm just kind of giving this a spray and letting this kind of drip down, just letting some interesting things kind of happen. Sometimes it doesn't go the way you think it might go, and you just kind of call an audible and go from there. But let the watercolor, the water itself, do some interesting things. create just some maybe reflective things. So now I'm just giving it a little bit more of a spray, and I'll come back in with the plastic card while that's still wet. You spray it with a spray bottle lightly. You can keep the paint wet, and you can keep manipulating it, almost sculpting it on the paper. It's almost like you're putting the paint on there and you're fixing it as you go. If you too much could result in fussing, but I like to think of it as almost like you're manipulating it on the paper and molding it to get it to where you want. It's not necessarily a fussiness. It's almost like if you were painting, one of the things I like to think of is if you try to fix things in your painting, you really don't want to do too much of that because you want it to appear natural. But in a way, if you try to fix things, it almost teaches you what you can and can't do with watercolor in an experimental way. And you'll find out how to get to what the actual results you wanted quicker. So don't be afraid to spray stuff and use a towel and wipe stuff and see just how flexible it can be on the paper. I mean, ultimately, you want to do as few moves as you possibly can. You don't want to do a lot of manipulation. You want it to be within as minimal strokes as you can. But I find that I get it on the paper and then I move things around as needed. And I have fun doing it, and that's the whole point behind it. So I like to use a lot of wet brush and towel and spray bottle and toothbrush and all those things that will create just some randomness and create texture, looking for some different textures because you're dealing with a two-dimensional image. So how do you make that image look more three-dimensional? You know, you do things, you scrape with the card, you create with the light and the dark balance. Like here, you're taking a little pink back out with the wet brush. If you can leave that in, great, beforehand. But if you see a spot where you say, well, this would look good if I kind of separated it with a little light here, that's good too. If you can do that. You can't get back to the total white of the paper, so if you want that, you'll have to do something else. Either paint around it. Some people use masking fluid. I'm not really a fan of masking fluid. So now here what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get, I want to keep that light in the middle as much as possible. That matches up with the top, a little reflective. But I want to make some sort of icy waters here to lead you in up to the mountains. Now you probably could stop right here and still have a pretty nice painting. Just kind of manipulating areas in the water, and then what I'll do is I'm going to take a little alizarin, trying to make that purpley color, nice dark purple color. We're going to create some contrast in the water here. We've got the light, but if we bring some darkening around it, it'll brighten that up even more. It could be land, it could be waves, whatever people see is fine because we got the main idea across. A little spray keeps things wet, kind of blends things a little bit. Again, we'll bring some over from the other side. Trying to keep things uniform in color, that same purple. Again, spray, let things run a little bit, take your wet brush, move things around, try it. I mean, some people just want to specifically paint exactly what they're doing, In my case, I'm kind of letting things happen, letting things run, moving things around. And it's almost like the Bob Ross happy accident, but you're causing accidents on purpose in a way, and letting things run and seeing what happens and letting the water do a lot of it. A little dabbing with the towel, try it. It's fun. It's more than just a brush. It's like sculpting. Now I'm just going to dab in some darker shaded areas here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with a little white gouache and let that blend in and put that on top. And again, it can either look like waves. Some people say it looks a little like waves, or it looks like ice or snow. A lot of times when you use gouache, if you use too much white, it looks like snow. But you can use it to make water kind of effects and things like that. It's just some people will look at it, to them it'll look a lot more snowish, if that's a word. Snowy? I'm going to have to keep a running vocabulary of the words I make up as I go along here. And if you dab a little gouache on while the paint's still wet, it'll kind of melt into the surrounding paint. And it won't look so stark white. I'm going to put a little more white on my board, and then I can just dab directly into that. I don't like to mix my white and get it into my main palette because it kind of gets everywhere. With the scraped mountains and you have the white, it kind of goes together and it doesn't look so obviously like white paint. But I like using white. A lot of people say, no, you shouldn't use white. But if you're limiting yourself from using a particular color, I got to say that's going to the other extreme, in my opinion. Use what you like to get to the results that give you the most satisfaction. And something like this I'm making up sort of as I go. Just quick couple of birds in the sky, give a little life. And I think we got some neat effects here. The mountain in front of that light there gives it almost a three-dimensional effect. And we're closing in on the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I've just surpassed 700 subscribers. That's amazing, and I appreciate everyone who has subscribed, and those of you who leave comments, and how you've gone out and you've bought your brushes and things like that. I think one of the best things we can do in art is to bring other people into also doing art. If you look at somebody like Bob Ross, his legacy is that he brought thousands upon thousands of people to art. Who knows what great artists came out of that encouragement. And I think that's probably the best part of this, and why I keep making these, because it just seems to be making other people happy. So here's the finished one. Let's zoom in real close. See that light we have? And we have the birds going and the cloud formation. I think this one turned out pretty good. Mountains. We've got our icy sort of water land area down at the bottom. And we've got a nice slick area toward the middle there. So again, everybody, thank you so much. Please subscribe and leave a comment. Happy painting, everyone.